The most protein-dense food your grandmother grew in her backyard has a higher amino acid score than most cuts of beef. And it disappeared from American plates the same decade that processed food took over the grocery store. That is not a coincidence, and it is not a nutrition trivia fact. It is the reason women over 60 are losing muscle at twice the rate of men their age while eating more protein than ever and still not getting the signal through. The gap is not the quantity. It is the delivery mechanism. Today, you are going to understand exactly why certain plants build muscle faster than meat for a body with your specific hormonal profile, and which ones they are. There is a protein in your muscle fiber called myosin. Think of it as the motor inside every movement you make. It is what contracts, what generates force, what keeps your legs from buckling when you stand up from a chair. After menopause, the signal that tells your body to keep rebuilding myosin goes quiet. Estrogen was part of that signal. It is not gone permanently. It just got quieter, which means the input has to get louder to get the same response. And for reasons that took researchers until 2019 to fully document, plant-based leucine, the specific amino acid that acts like a doorbell for muscle protein synthesis, rings that doorbell harder in a post-menopausal body than the leucine in most animal proteins. Think of it this way. Estrogen used to be a key that unlocked the muscle door from the inside. Now the key is mostly gone. Leucine from certain plants is a battering ram that works from the outside. It is louder, more insistent, and for a body that is no longer responding to subtle signals, louder is what works. The first plant almost no one talks about is fava beans. They have been cultivated for 10,000 years. They were a staple protein source across the Mediterranean and Middle East until industrial agriculture crowded them out in the 1950s and 60s. Not because they were inferior, but because they were harder to process at scale. A single cup of cooked favas delivers 26 grams of protein with a leucine concentration that rivals whey. But what makes them different from most legumes is the L-dopa content, a precursor to dopamine that also directly activates growth hormone pathways in women. Growth hormone in your 50s and 60s does something specific. It acts like a construction foreman, telling the body to use incoming protein for building rather than burning. Without it, even high protein intake gets routed to energy instead of repair. Favas send the foreman back to work. Most women eat them once a year, if ever. And there is a reason the research on this is mostly European. The plant never got the industrial agricultural funding that soy and corn did. But none of this explains why the next plant on this list does something no supplement company can legally put on a label. That comes next. Moringa is a tree that grows in tropical climates and was called the miracle tree in traditional medicine across 3 continents, not because of mystical properties, but because its leaves contain a complete amino acid profile, 9 times the protein of yogurt by weight, and a compound called isothiocyanate that does something specific to insulin sensitivity. Think of insulin sensitivity as the width of the door into your muscle cells. The wider it is, the more amino acids can walk in and get to work. In most women over 60, that door has narrowed, not from diet failure, but from the normal hormonal shift that changes how muscle cells respond to insulin signaling. Isothiocyanate from moringa widens the door. A study published in the Journal of Food Science and Technology in 2014 found measurable improvement in peripheral glucose uptake in postmenopausal women within 8 weeks of daily moringa supplementation, without any change to exercise or total calorie intake. The door got wider. More protein got through. You can find moringa leaf powder at most health food stores. 1 tablespoon in a morning smoothie delivers roughly 3 grams of complete protein and the full isothiocyanate dose. It is not a meal replacement. It is a door opener that makes every other protein source you eat that day more effective. This is the mechanism I built. strong past the drop around. The insight that for a body over 50, it is not how much protein you eat, but whether the cellular environment is ready to use it. The protocol walks through the specific plate structure, the plant pairings, the timing windows, and the walking routine that keeps insulin sensitivity primed so protein actually reaches the muscle. It is on screen if that is where you are, but there is one more plant that changes the picture completely, and it works through a pathway that has nothing to do with protein at all. Hemp seeds. Not hemp protein powder, raw hemp seeds. The distinction matters because the whole seed contains something the isolate strips out. A specific ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids called 3:1, which is the only ratio in any food source that matches the ratio your cell membranes need to stay permeable. Think of your muscle cell membrane as a window screen. When the screen is intact and fine-meshed, only the right molecules get through. When it degrades, which happens progressively after menopause due to the change in cellular membrane turnover, the screen gets coarse. Amino acids that should be absorbed slip through. Inflammatory signals that should be blocked get in. The result is that even when protein is present and leucine is ringing the doorbell, the cell cannot respond properly. The fatty acid ratio in hemp seeds repairs the screen, not over months, measurably within 3 to 4 weeks of consistent daily intake, according to a 2017 paper in the journal Nutrients. 30 grams of hemp seeds, about 3 tablespoons, provides 10 grams of complete protein, the full fatty acid profile, and enough gamma-linolenic acid to suppress the low-grade systemic inflammation that is the silent reason most over 50 training programs stall. The stall is not the muscle. It is the cellular environment the muscle is trying to work inside. Lentils are the oldest cultivated legume on Earth. Archaeological evidence places them in human diets 9,000 years ago, and they were abandoned at scale for one reason. They require soaking, and soaking takes time, and time became the enemy of industrial food production. What got lost when lentils got crowded out is a protein called resistant starch-bound peptide, a compound that does not digest in the small intestine but ferments in the colon, feeding the specific gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids. Short-chain fatty acids do two things that matter enormously for muscle in a post-menopausal body. They reduce intestinal permeability, meaning less inflammatory debris leaks into the bloodstream and reaches muscle tissue, and they directly upregulate IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor, the messenger that tells satellite cells in your muscle fibers to wake up and multiply. Satellite cells are the repair crew. They live dormant inside muscle tissue and only activate when the right signal comes. IGF-1 is that signal. After menopause, IGF-1 production drops. Not to zero, but low enough that the repair crew stays mostly asleep. Lentil fermentation wakes them up from the gut upward. This is why the sequencing matters. Moringa widens the door. Hemp seeds repair the membrane. Lentils activate the crew. Favas send the foreman back to work. Each one operates on a different part of the same system, and none of them replaces the others. But there is one more thing the standard protein conversation never addresses, and it is the reason the timing of when you eat these plants matters as much as which ones you choose. Cortisol follows a daily arc in every woman's body. It peaks in the morning, around 7 to 9, and that peak is not a stress response. It is a metabolic window. Cortisol in the morning is acting as a mobilizer. It raises blood glucose, sharpens insulin sensitivity in muscle tissue specifically, and creates a brief period where the cellular environment is primed to use incoming protein more efficiently than at any other point in the day. Researchers at the University of Maastricht documented in 2020 that muscle protein synthesis in women over 50 was 38% higher when the same protein intake was front-loaded into that cortisol window versus spread evenly across the day. Same food, same amount. 38% more muscle signal, just from timing. Most women eat their lightest meal in the morning and their heaviest at night. The biology runs exactly the opposite direction. The window is open in the morning. By evening, the window has mostly closed. Eating a large protein meal at 9 at night is like arriving at the warehouse after the foreman has gone home. The materials are there. Nobody is directing them. The muscle loss that most women accept as inevitable after 60 is not an age sentence. It is a signaling problem in a body that has been given the right materials at the wrong time, through the wrong delivery mechanism, into a cellular environment that was never repaired. The standard solutions kept shouting louder: more protein, more exercise, more discipline, without asking whether the receiver was still tuned to the same frequency. These plants work because they change the frequency and the window. They do not add more noise to a channel that has already stopped listening. They find the channels that are still open, and they speak the language those channels recognize. You now understand 4 specific mechanisms: the foreman, the door, the screen, the repair crew, and which plants activate each one. The question is what to do with that on a Tuesday morning when you are standing in the kitchen trying to build a meal that actually does what you now know a meal can do. That is the gap. Strong Past the Drop was built to close. I put together an 8-week protocol specifically for women over 50 whose bodies stopped responding to the standard playbook. It maps the plate structure meal by meal, the plant pairings that hit all 4 mechanisms together, the specific daily walking pattern that keeps insulin sensitivity primed between meals, and the simple leg strength routine that gives the repair crew something to repair. It is not a diet, it is a signal rebuild. The cost reflects the time it took to build it properly. The link is on screen.